Welcome. So I'm going to kick things off today about getting started with big data. And just as a way of an introduction to who I am, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pendo. Pendo is an analytics company, so technically I guess we would argue we're big data. We actually don't call ourselves that, and I'll explain why we don't in a few slides. Before that, I was the head of product at a company called Rally Software. It went public a few years ago, so recently sized company. And then I founded a company locally before that, 6 Sense Analytics, also an analytics company, headquartered here. We sold that company to Rally. That office is still here. And then, before that, in a long time, kind of CTO, a technologist. I like to run. That's me finishing the Boston Marathon, and I think running has evolved a lot. I mean, actually, qualifying for some of the Boston Marathon is not actually an easy thing. When I was in my 20s, I was like, that'll be my goal. Well, I didn't realize it would take me like 8 years to solve that goal, given how much I was working. It's really, really difficult. And honestly, analytics helped a lot in helping me achieve that goal. I mean, now I have an Apple Watch. It's what I use from an analytics perspective to help measure my fitness, my workouts. It's just one of the few examples how analytics have changed our lives, changed how we live. And I'll talk more about those. So this is one of our customers, one of Pendo's customers. This is Desk.com, and you may have heard of them. They're a subsidiary of Salesforce.com. You probably all heard of Salesforce.com. They're a customer of ours. And at this very moment, we are installed in their application and we are capturing the data. And we're capturing everything that's happening in this application. So just to give you a sense of scale, we're capturing 700,000 events an hour across 28,000 visitors a day. We've captured almost, I think we captured over 500 million events from them just in 2 months of collaborating with them as a customer, right? That's a lot of data, right? 700,000 events an hour is a ton of data. So the question is, well, why does this matter, right? Why is this important? Well, they want to know how people are using their application. They invest a lot of money in their product development. They've got a lot of screens, a lot of tabs, a lot of capabilities, a lot of requests from customers, and they want to know, are my best customers using the product in the right way? What does it mean for someone to be a best customer? So we know when someone renews at a higher rate, but do we know why? Do we know what features cause them to renew? Do we know what are leading indicators that we would possibly lose them? And this is all data we can give them without any effort from them. So before something like Pendo or other data-driven applications, if you want to answer this question, you would need to call them up and you need to ask. And honestly, if you're asking, it's probably already too late. You've already probably missed out on some signals that could indicate losing them as a customer, and the fact that it's not optimal, right? But with data, with technologies like this, it's possible to, in advance, save that customer, understand trends, prioritize better, and that's what we do. That's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about data, because it can fundamentally transform the way we do everything in business. And I'll give you an example from product. That's what we do. But every aspect of business is being disrupted by data, and that's what I really want to talk about today. Now, I said earlier that, early on, we're venture funded. We raised, our last round was over $11 million in new capital. It's a lot of money. Everyone who puts together an investment deck will have trends and things like that. And my first version had a slide that said big data. And a lot of you were like, oh, that's really old. Like, that's not cool anymore. You can't call yourself, no one wants to be a big data solution. It was really interesting. I got a negative, visceral reaction to the use of big data. I ripped it out. I no longer use that. And what's interesting is big data is no longer hype. It is not cool. The simple fact is, people don't like it. It's not cool. This is from 2014. You'll see in 2014, Gartner produces what's called the hype cycle. If you're familiar with Gartner Group, it has these different phases, like innovation trigger, peak of inflated expectations, trough of disillusionment, etc. And what happened was in 2014, you can see it's gone over the trough or into the trough of disillusionment, and in 2015, it's gone. I mean, it's not just like moved on, like it's disappeared from the entire map whatsoever, which is fascinating. So it used to be obviously an important enough thing that they, it's really only one of 30 trends, right? So that's pretty statistical significance, and it's gone the next year. And the interesting thing is why. The why is that big data is no longer really a thing. It's become prevalent across so many other things that it's really part of every other hype cycle. It's really a discussion. This is Betsy Burton from Gartner Group talking about this. So that's what's really interesting, is that it's really transcended data from being a thing of its own to literally an aspect, a differentiator, a capability of everything we do. If you're using an application and doesn't have data as a piece of it, making it better, you're probably using a bad application. You know, if you're producing an application and you're not using data as part of it, there's probably a problem. I mean, I just got done interviewing PR firms weeks ago. I mean, every PR firm now has a huge slide on analytics and how you measure, your voice in the market. And they're actually using vendors that didn't exist 3 years ago. They simply didn't exist. But now that it's table stakes, you simply have to have it. If you don't have it, I'm not going to call you back. So that's what's really fundamentally changed. So my question to you guys is, are you using data enough in your business? Are you expecting as much out of your vendors, your customers, and are you delivering data back to them? Because if you're not, at the end of the day, you're going to get left behind. So I've just adopted cycling recently. That's my new hobby. I was a runner, but then I had a meniscus surgery. If you've had that, it kind of sucks. It slowed me down. I can't run as fast. And my doctor told me I may not be able to play tennis at 80. And even though I'm not 80, I want to be able to play tennis when I'm 80. So I've taken up cycling. And I've already known from doing these long rides, once you drop off the back, once you get behind the group, the peloton, so to speak, you don't have drafting, it's a lot harder to pedal. And that's what I think about people that aren't adopting data. If you haven't adopted or not thinking about it or don't have a strategy, you're probably dropped off the back a little bit, and winning, being more successful is just that much harder. You have to pedal harder. You have to work harder. You have to put in that much more effort because everyone else is simply going faster than you are. And you have to work harder to catch up. So my advice is, don't drop off the back. If you haven't done something, start transforming in a way to do that. So the question is, how do we get here? Well, why is data so pervasive? This is a great slide. This is I stole this from Mary Meeker, who stole this from IDC. Mary Meeker, who's a yearly report on trends in technology, one of the best reads you could ever read for technology. And it's very, very simple. It's the rate of addition of data has climbed so much that the data captured in the last 2 years is more than all data ever combined. The access to information, whether it's pictures, whether it's documents, whether it's tweets, whether information is so pervasive, and the ability to capture it, there's so much out there that it's just given us new sources of ways to be smarter, right? And it's that trend coupled with the next trend, which is the cost to store data has diminished at similar amounts. So these are two combining trends which make big data, data-based applications so pervasive. Because now it's literally like 2 cents a gig to store data. This is just a handful of cloud examples, but Amazon, Google, Microsoft, it's dirt cheap, 2 cents a gig. I mean, that's what it costs now at scale, right? So if you think about that, I mean, we have no penalty. We actually are encouraged to get more data. So when we started Pendo, we were able to start a company from nothing, literally nothing, to the point where today we are capturing nearly 8 billion events a month, a billion events a week from our customers. We have no infrastructure. We don't have a single server. I talk to real estate people and they're like, well, you're a big data company. Where's all your machines and your like special raised floors and all your climate control is? We only have laptops. Everything is stored in the cloud, and everything is, we've ranked compute, and it is dirt cheap for billions of data. Dirt cheap. It's so inexpensive that we actually just arbitrarily collect more all the time because it's only cost us incrementally more money. Now, generally, don't worry, we do have a reasonable hosting bill at this point, but still, the actual data storage piece of that bill is shockingly small. So less than 10% of our overall cost per month to host our entire product. So that's huge, that's different, and that's changed our design criteria, because now I don't care about more data. Bring it on, give us more. More data actually doesn't affect us in a negative way. It just honestly gives us more we can be smart about. Even if we don't use it, it's better to have it than not have it, because maybe 3 years from now we're going to want to use it. And that's the way I look at it. If I only want something a year and a half from now, start collecting it today. So we're adding mobile support, and so we can grab data from mobile browsers. And the thesis is we won't worry about mobile as like a product until 2016. But you know what? The sooner we get the data, the better. Right? It doesn't cost us anything. Why not do it? These are the trends that have transformed business. Now, the challenge with big data is that it has created this. And I don't know if you've seen the slides from FirstMark, great investors up in Manhattan. They have compiled a list of every single vendor that's loosely speaking in the big data space. And you can see it's an obscene number of vendors. And that's why I think it scares a lot of people when they think about data. And don't try to read it. I'll walk you through this piece by piece and explain to you what's important on this, right? So this is the landscape in general. So we start with it is, I think what's really interesting is there's been a huge amount of innovation in the data sources. Just the access to data has been huge. And you can see everything on the health side. Again, I go back to my Apple Watch. If you have a chance to catch the last Apple keynote, Tim cooked it on Healthcare Kit. Healthcare Kit is Apple's health movement. They partner with researchers like Duke and Stanford. People in the Apple Watch now are submitting information for Parkinson's and autism and epilepsy. And what's fascinating is that they've shifted the ability to do clinical trials on very small data sets to much larger data sets just by getting closer to people. So now you can opt in on your watch, your phone, you can put in information. It's transforming health because they have access to more data. Very simply, they can spot better trends by having better data. And if you think about how that's going to affect our lives and our children's lives, that's huge. And that's just a piece of it. Fitbit's another great example. My last company, Rally Software, had Brad Feld as one of our lead investors. People know Brad from his blog. If you don't know Brad, check out his blog, pretty well-known VC. Brad and I were speaking, this was years ago, before Fitbit went public. He was the first investor in Fitbit, and his thesis was simple. He's like, in 30 years, our bodies are going to have so many things attached to them, capturing so much data, that we're going to know everything about our bodies. It's simple, it's obvious. We're already starting to move here. Think about what the innovation we've seen in the last year. Fitbit's version 1.0 of that. Right, that's the way he looks at it. It's 1.0 of something that in 30 years will be not only mainstream, but far more pervasive than it is today. And that's just another really great example. But I look throughout this data, and there's all sorts of interesting examples. S3 is a good example. I was meeting with a local CEO, and S3 has 95% market share of location data within local communities. Because what you don't realize is, everyone can go to any store and get a map of the United States, and you can get things like zip codes, and you get things like area codes. Local data is very difficult, whether it's for tax purposes. Like, depending on where you drive and carry, it actually changes your local taxes pretty dramatically, right? It's a micro level type problem. It's not a macro level problem. And location data is really interesting. S3 is a really interesting company that maybe a lot of people don't know about, but they control 95% of location data in the world for small local communities. And honestly, that's what you need for a lot of business applications. You need that local data. What else do we have? Air and space data. There's a lot of economic data. This has transformed our business as well. Whether it's Mattermark, we're a customer of them. CB Insights. Now, if you want to get lists of companies that have raised money in the big data space because you want to sell to them, you can go to these databases and plug in two things and get every company ever, right? The quality and pervasiveness of data, again, so much more than we had before. I was talking for someone from HubSpot. People may know HubSpot, but they're doing really creative things from a marketing perspective, leveraging Facebook data. People that have posted things about starting a business from this time to this time, who haven't posted this, send them a direct message, right? So micro marketing, but all tailored on tons of data. Because they're knowing so much about us. Every time you like a photo, every time you read an article, every time you congratulate a friend every time you check into a restaurant. Think about how much data they know about you now to hyper-target you. They know that, oh, you like the architect, so that must mean you like loud, noisy clubs I hear that, yeah, I haven't been here, actually, I won't just say negative, but yeah, I mean, they know a lot, so that's the whole point. So maybe they can target you with ads that would be beneficial. So huge value here. Infrastructure. I think infrastructure is what most people think about when they think about analytics. And I would also include in this, I didn't include all of them, but companies like SaaS. I mean, obviously, people are kind of here. Obviously, they're absolutely in the analytics infrastructure place. But this is like, loosely speaking, business intelligence. Another nice term for OLAP. That's data warehouse, cubes. I'm not going to bore you with lots of details, but this is huge market, and you'll see things like NoSQL databases, and I'll explain what that is. New SQL databases, so I mean the distinction is interesting. Spark, more real-time analytics. Hadoop, people may have heard of Hadoop. That's an open source project, and I'll talk more about technologies like Hadoop. But there are companies that all they do is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 that do Hadoop in the cloud. 8. So there's one thing to want Hadoop. If you want to buy it, now you have 8 cloud-based choices, and then you have another 8 to 10 on-premise choices, the biggest of which is probably Cloudera and a few others. So really, really huge company. You see companies like Oracle playing here, Microsoft, Amazon, huge companies. And you also, huge bits of the infrastructure. And then, the other analytics, okay, this is actually, I do have more business intelligence here. You have things that are well-known companies, visualization, everyone probably heard of Tableau. And Tableau is basically mostly a visualization tool. That's what it's for. And you would combine that generally with other things. Splunk, also well-known product, log file management, so also loosely within the analytics framework as well. So again, huge array of companies. Then you have folks like Domo and Burst and Looker, which provide SaaS-based dashboards, business intelligence products as well. Good data is in there. So a huge number of companies. And then lastly, the technology. I already talked about Hadoop. There's so much innovation here. MongoDB. A lot of these are open source. And it's really created I call it buzzword bingo. So extract, transform, load. That's actually getting data, massaging it, and loading it into a database. Basically, is what it is. So it's interesting. I started my career at 14 programming for a company called MBNA. It was acquired by Bank of America. I basically wrote ETL for a living. Granted, I was 15, so I really didn't know what it was called then. But we took giant dumps of data from MasterCard, and we ripped them apart, and then we fed that into a SQL database to help answer whether our collections reps were collecting well or not. That's basically what we did. It was an analytics application. It wasn't big data at the time. I mean, of course, it was huge amounts of data, but we didn't call it that. It wasn't cool. But that's basically ETL. BI already covers business intelligence. Hadoop is generally open source big data infrastructure. And that relates a lot to MapReduce, which is another really popular term you're going to hear. That's about MapReduce basically processes lots of data at scale. At Pendo, we heavy users of MapReduce. R is another thing you'll hear a lot. R is a statistical programming language. Also very, very common. So these are just some quick terms to keep yourself. You can impress people at dinner parties. Maybe come back here later tonight and start throwing around R and ETL. I mean, it may play out well for you guys. So, and this is something. There's actually a guy on the internet. I don't know this picture, but it's Data Science Borat. He's got his own Twitter handle, and he produced Data Science Conference bingo card. You can see a lot of these, so which is really, really funny. So I want to end with a few slides on how to get started. So there's two ways you think about the data in your business. Do you want to simply use data to make decisions, or do you want to bet your business on big data? So in Pendo's case, we actually do both. We are heavy users of big data, but big data is core to what we do. It is what we sell, it's what we deliver, it is core to our business. So that means that we not only have to find solutions that are provide us with really good data, but we also have to build up internal expertise around being good at this. And the reason I say there's difference is because it's hard to build up internal expertise. It's hard and it's expensive. This is a Glassdoor, hottest jobs in America. #1 is data scientist. #1. Average salary is $160,000 across the United States. There's a bunch of job opportunities. #1 in the United States right now. You can see Indeed, you go to Indeed.com and search job scores, you'll see it's one of the fastest growing jobs in America. And the reason is because it's hard. And these people don't grow on trees. And NC State actually has an amazing analytics program, so we're so fortunate to have it. But honestly, I've tried to recruit from there and they all go somewhere else. It is really difficult. So I would almost expect to not get one. Set your expectations low and maybe you'll luck out and get one. So, but if you were trying to become if you want data to be core to your business, start looking for one of these people now. It's actually going to be really, really, really hard. And that's just something that if you don't have to do that, I'd actually recommend it. And what I would do is the rightmost part of that landscape was applications. And these are companies that have basically taken all of that data and come up with a consumable application to fit your business problem. And honestly, that's what Pendo does. I mean, we don't bore someone with data science. We don't force people to use R as a statistical programming language to use our product. We give them an application they can log in, drag and drop, and get answers, right? And that's the products we like to use. So start with applications that are geared towards it. And there's a lot of really great ones. Human Capital. I mean, this is Entelo. I happen to know the CEO personally. They help you use big data for recruiting. They analyze all the recruitment data, they analyze the trends, they help give you data on how to recruit better. Sales and marketing, Gainsight. We were at Gainsight's conference, I was last week. Gainsight gives analytics on how to retain customers. Looking at support tickets and a bunch of other things, tons of marketing data companies. I mean, literally there are, it's really, really popular. I mean, 6sense is one. Engage.io is one. Security. Lots of security companies that sift through millions of rows of data and help say, here's an alert. So you can do it yourself. You could roll your own or just buy an application that does it. And that way you get the best of big data without having to invest in big data know-how. So that's a great way to, if I'm starting from scratch, this is what I would do. Go seek products that can give you answers. So my recommendation is to make big data and data part of everything you do. Demand it out of every application you use. Make sure that if you're not leveraging data, you're probably missing an opportunity. You're probably making worse decisions than your competitors who are using data or the alternatives. And now the question is, once you get it, you need to then use it, and that means making decisions based on it. And sometimes that's super hard. Sometimes wow, the data says this, but my gut doesn't feel like it. Well, I will recommend data is just an input. If you think your gut knows better, or you think the data is missing, then obviously do what's best. You're supposed to say, Todd told me to trust the data, and I just made a horrible decision and ruined my business. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that sometimes they can open your eyes to things that you weren't quite expecting. Sometimes you'll see a trend that was maybe counterintuitive, and it's worth delving into that trend. It's worth going a little bit deeper. And I think if you do that, the fact is all the big companies are doing this. So you look for examples, every company is doing this. So if you want to be a great company, this is just the Fortune 500. I'm not sure if that's your aspirations or not, but I highly recommend it. And I'll close with one of my favorite big data stories. This is House of Cards. If you haven't watched it, I recommend it. It's on Netflix. It is a big data use case. Really, really simple. They looked at, they overpaid for the script and the rights to it. If people don't know that, it was a heavily competitive bid. And they paid, I think, $100 million to get the show on Netflix. And but they learned this. They could look at viewership within Netflix of The Social Network. Social Network's a movie that is also created by David Fincher, the creator of the show. They looked at people like Kevin Spacey movies. And then people that also looked, loosely speaking, at government dramas and saw really, really good connections, and they bought it. And typically TV success rates are at 35% for new show. That's 35% of shows that have a first season have a second season. It's not a low hit rate. Their hit rates have been in the 85% range because they're using data to help adjust and help drive their studio decisions about what content they're purchasing. And what's interesting is that House of Cards alone has driven significant subscribers, new subscribers to Netflix that weren't previously Netflix subscribers. So not just as a successful show, it grew their subscriber base. And they did it all with big data. So that's it. That's all I have.
Thank you. So guys, we'll do like 5 minutes of Q&A. Does anybody have any questions to start?
Discern between, one other way of phrasing it, signals versus noise, right?
I just want to be understanding.
Yeah. I think that's always a big challenge. There's always a ton of information, and I think when we start getting new data, I think we start drilling into more details. There's a great book. My last company had on its advisory board a guy named Robert Austin. Robert Austin taught at Harvard Business School, fellow alum from Carnegie Mellon, so he and I became kind of friends. And he wrote a book on measurement dysfunction. And what he says is when you start measuring only one measure, you have the challenge of dysfunction. And what that means is, like, let's say you're recruiting a recruiting company. Let's say you're measuring interviews, and you're paying your recruiters bonuses based on interviews. Well, you're going to get a lot of bad interviews, right? Whereas if you combine interviews with 30-day retention of an employee, that gives you a complete picture of the system. The system is, we have to interview a bunch of people, we have to make good decisions hiring them, and have to stay at the company you're in and retain it. That's the system. You want both measures, because if you're only measuring retention and people aren't coming through the door, you're probably missing out on an opportunity, right? So I think what I advise most people is getting the most holistic picture. It's like, in our business, we're looking at new revenue growth, but we're also looking at churn. If we grow all our top line growth at the expense of losing customers because we don't take care of them, that's an incomplete system, right? So you don't want to over-rotate for one measure off of another. And so I'm a huge advocate of putting complete holistic measurement programs. So.
I love the example of Netflix too, right? I mean, that's just, House of Cards, if anybody doesn't know that story, it's a great story because that show wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for them doing the analysis and the analytics team at Netflix. I think one of my other favorite examples, and it's going to be, in my opinion, probably one of the most disruptive that we'll ever see in our lifetime is what's happening now with autonomous driving. That's all data, and that is going to completely disrupt our human existence. I mean, what's going to happen with autonomous driving, from the way you use cars, to the way highways are built, to what we do on a daily basis, and it's all backed through data. So, any other questions for Todd before we wrap up and move on? Take a quick break. Yep.
Don't hire from NC State. Where do you hire from? Because I've stopped trying to hire from the NC State analytics program. They're just too expensive.
Honestly, I know a lot of entrepreneurs in the area too. Appia, I know Judd Bone pretty well. They picked up a bunch of data scientists from RTP. Former biologists, other things. That's one of the interesting things about data science people don't realize, is that the skills, while people may not be in your industry, the skills are highly transferable skills, right? So even at Raleigh, I had a data scientist on my team. He's a biology major. Then biology majors, like PhD in biology. One, it's hard to get a job with a PhD in biology, I learned. But they have to know a lot of statistics. It's insane. If you're a scientist in a program, you're probably as good as stats, maybe as good as stats as an analytics person. So that's one area I would probably look. Be creative, and you get into the analytics program, everyone's targeting those people. So I heard that in the last class, the Baltimore Ravens came in and picked up at least one or a few. That's hard to compete with the Baltimore Ravens. At least it's a good brand. People like sports. It's very difficult. So, but anyway,
Yeah, Ashish, don't forget, I know you already hired someone from my program. I went through Northwestern's predictive analytics program, but
No, I've stopped hiring from the NC State program though.
yeah. So there are online programs too.
They're just too pricey, even for like, even for large employers.
With data
I'm
now.
being very honest, they're just too pricey.
Yeah. So the question was, if anybody didn't hear it too, where are you hiring from? If NC State is the resources, to Todd's point, are really constrained right now. So be creative. To your point, I mean, it could be biologists in RTP. My wife runs HR for a biotech firm in RTP, and she's constantly getting her folks post in data science because, again, it's a transferable skill. So look at online programs too. Look at people that are taking courses for through Coursera and things like that. So, one last question.
Yeah, so Duke launched a new program this week.
That's right.
Working on analytics. It's going to kick off next year. They're looking at a recent grad master program. Essentially, it looks mirror image to the NC State program. We'll see kind of how they do. But I think all these kids are going to be snapped up everywhere. And it's a competition until there's more undergrads coming out with the skills. It's going to be dog eat dog, and your employer value proposition really starts to matter a lot.
Yeah, for anyone who didn't hear the news, so Fuqua, I think it's going through Fuqua, and I used to work there about 10 years ago in the MBA program. They just launched a new program, and what's interesting about their program, they're not teaching data science. They're actually, there's a huge gap in the industry right now where they don't have people that know how to run businesses to understand how to use data. And that's what that program, it's a master in quantitative management, I think it was, that they just announced this week. So it's going to be really fascinating to see what Fuqua does with that. Yeah, cool. All right, thanks, Dr.
Okay.